The City of London is the centre of the UK finance sector. But behind the shiny facade lies a dirty secret. As the world stands on the brink of catastrophic climate change, UK financial institutions pump billions of pounds into high-carbon fossil fuel projects that are causing climate change and wreaking destruction on the lives of people living nearby.
When people think about dirty industry, they often think about coal companies, oil and gas companies, but the reality is it's actually the financial sector who bear a lot of the responsibility for climate change and the negative results that arise from it. It's just not acceptable for banks and pension funds and asset management firms to claim that they're just providing a service. The finance industry and those regulating it really just need to wake up to the fact that when they lend billions and billions of pounds to coal, oil and gas companies, they are complicit in the negative effects that those companies have on the ground in the developing world.
Research by the World Development Movement shows that the big 5 UK banks, HSBC, Barclays, RBS, Lloyds and Standard Chartered, helped fossil fuel companies to raise £170 billion between 2010 and 2012. The banks are not the only problem. The UK government and the London Stock Exchange are also complicit in helping fossil fuel companies raise funds from UK investors. Currently, the fossil fuel reserves held by companies listed on London Stock Exchange will produce 214 gigatons of CO2 emissions. This is 475 times the UK's carbon emissions for 2011 and 6 times the global carbon emissions for that year. The London Stock Exchange also has the largest coal reserves held by any stock exchange in the world. These financial investments are not only damaging to the climate, but also to the communities where extraction takes place. Kalimantan, the Indonesian part of the island of Borneo, is one of many parts of the world feeling the devastating effects of the UK finance sector's addiction to fossil fuels. Local communities are being evicted from their land, rainforests are being destroyed, and rivers polluted by UK-financed coal mining companies.
Sehingga di banyak tempat bukan saja terjadi alih fungsi kawasan-kawasan hutan, terjadi juga kehilangan kekayaan keragaman hayati, terjadi juga penyingkiran, pemindahan paksa warga dari ruang hidupnya.
One such company is Bumi plc, which raised £707 million in the UK in 2010 to fund its coal mining in Indonesia. Bumi's largest coal mining project is Kaltim Prima Coal. Spanning 90,000 hectares, this project affects the territories of dozens of towns and villages. Bumi's coal mining has destroyed the area. Where once there was tropical rainforest, there are now enormous gaping holes and toxic tailing ponds, with only small pockets of forest remaining. Many indigenous people dependent on the land for sustenance have lost their land and livelihood as a result of coal mining. The people of the village of Escalating have been relocated 3 times, losing their land each time.
Ya, kami berburu, cari ikan, cari binatang, bikin jerat, gitu. Nah, jadi sekarang ini kami kalau untuk berburu itu mungkin agak susah, karena binatang sudah jauh. Kalau dulu biar pinggir belukar aja binatangnya ada. Kalau ini Pak, kalau menurut saya, pribadi saya Pak, yang menguntungkan itu perusahaan, bukan masyarakat. Itu orangnya tidak dihiraukan lagi, malah di jalan mau dipindahkan. Itu Pak.
As well as listing on the London Stock Exchange, coal mining companies can access finance directly from UK banks. In January 2012, the Indonesian company Borneo Lambung secured a $1 billion loan from Standard Chartered Bank, the UK's second biggest bank. Borneo Lambung is mining in the less explored, more remote region of central Kalimantan, home to some of Indonesia's precious remaining rainforest. The World Development Movement visited this mine in 2013 to look at the impacts firsthand.
Behind me is the entrance to a coal mine, which is literally situated in the middle of the rainforest. It's quite shocking even for me to consider that the money that comes from the UK financial sector, from the banks, from investors, the ultimate result of all that is what we see behind us. Lots of mines like this across pristine rainforest in the middle of Kalimantan. This is the real cost of our unregulated financial sector.
Just like Bumi in East Kalimantan, Borneo Lumbung is destroying the rainforest to make way for its mines. Waste from the mines makes its way into the rivers that the local people rely on.
Sedang keruh kelihatan ini kalau sudah banjir gini nih, naik ini airnya keruh, sudah nggak bisa mandi, sudah gini nih Pak. Ya kalau mandi ini tanah ini melulu itu, gatal mungkin sudah. Apalagi untuk dikonsumsi itu sudah nggak bisa. Kalau dulu bening air ini bersih, nggak seperti sekarang, nggak bisa sudah. Kami itu merasa terancam untuk generasi penerus kami itu. Bagaimana untuk anak cucu kami yang kedepannya kami merasa terancam. Seperti ya enggak lah menerima pertambangan gini. Masuk tuh enggak lah gitu. Cukup ini aja, enggak, kami enggak mau lagi itu.
Kami menyadari ya dengan hadirnya berbagai perusahaan itu, maka sumber daya alam yang kami miliki sedikit demi sedikit akan habis. Demikian juga kebun, tanah yang kami miliki juga sedikit demi sedikit akan musnah dengan hadirnya beberapa perusahaan tambang yang ada di sekitar tempat kami. Jadi dengan demikian, dengan tidak adanya tanah, tidak ada lagi tanaman pohon karet, tidak ada lagi tempat untuk berladang, bercocok tanam dan sebagainya, mengakibatkan tidak ada lagi pemasukan untuk kami. Sehingga kami tidak bisa lagi mencukupi segala kebutuhan kami, apalagi sampai menyekolahkan anak-anak kami. Diambil oleh perusahaan, dikeruk sumber dayanya, kemudian tidak ditanami kembali. Sehingga mengakibatkan tempat tersebut menjadi tandus, gersang, seperti yang sudah kita lihat selama beberapa tahun ini.
Despite suffering the worst effects, local people receive very few benefits from coal mining in Kalimantan. Industrial energy production on their land has not increased access to electricity in rural communities. In this village, a generator is used to supplement power, but lengthy power cuts are still an everyday occurrence.
Jadi secara fakta memang kelihatannya bahwa sumber daya alam di Kutai Timur, khususnya di Kecamatan Bengalon itu luar biasa besarnya, khususnya batu bara. Tetapi bicara masalah kesejahteraan, mencakup masalah penerangan listrik itu tadi, memang ada PLN di sini, bukan tidak ada. Tapi kapasitasnya tidak mampu menerangi seluruh rumah masyarakat, sehingga kami sendiri terpaksa harus sewa atau pakai genset lain. Padahal di depan mata kita batu bara sebagai sumber energi itu tidak bisa berbuat apa-apa untuk di Bengalon.
The coal mining boom is spreading. Global mining giant BHP Billiton, along with an Indonesian company, plans to destroy a huge area of forest in central Kalimantan in order to mine for coal. BHP Billiton is valued at £40 billion on the London Stock Exchange, and as it is a FTSE 100 company, almost every pension fund in the UK has money invested in it. It has also received billions of pounds in corporate loans from UK banks, including Barclays, Lloyds and RBS. If BHP Billiton's mining project goes ahead, this part of Borneo, with its forests teeming with life, its rivers full of fish, and its people still able to live from the land, could end up just like the wasteland that coal mining has created in East Kalimantan.
Well, I'm stood next to this absolutely enormous tree in the middle of the rainforest, and you know, it's being here is almost like being in heaven in some ways. You can hear the sounds of nature and the sounds of the rainforest all around you. You can see these majestic trees and all the wildlife. But in amongst the sort of sounds of the rainforest, you can also hear the relentless drone of trucks and diggers and the various other vehicles that the mining companies are using, because we are just meters away from a massive mine. And this area which I'm standing in at the moment is in fact earmarked for destruction. These trees, and including this one which is over 100 years old, is in fact not going to be here in possibly as little as a few months' time. What's happening here is a huge injustice. Rainforests like this are being destroyed, local communities' livelihoods are being destroyed, yet we, our companies and our financial institutions are investing massively in companies that are destroying the environment here and fueling climate change. And that, I think, is an absolute scandal.
Not only do these high carbon investments damage the climate and local communities, but experts say it could also have a massive impact on the financial markets, similar to the recent global financial crisis.
So what we found in the global financial crisis is that you had a situation there where debt was just being piled into a market, and it was all predicated that house prices would just keep on going up forever. It was really a speculative bubble that was created, and that could never be sustained. And in an exactly identical way, we've got a situation now where investment, money, debt is being piled into assets which are based upon high carbon, where, due to limits and the effects of climate change, that can also not be sustained.
If all the fossil fuel reserves were burnt, we would be heading towards a catastrophic 6 degrees Celsius increase in global temperatures. To avoid this, the UK government and other nations have committed to reduce carbon emissions to limit global warming to 2 degrees Celsius. Research by Carbon Tracker has revealed that to meet this target, only 20% of the total fossil fuel reserves can be burnt by 2050.
We've added up all of the coal, oil and gas reserves and turned it into CO2, and then compared that to a carbon budget, which is the maximum amount you can emit globally from energy emissions to have a decent chance of achieving the 2-degree target. And we found that the conservative view is that there's already 5 times more reserves than we could afford to burn to have an 80% chance of achieving the 2-degree target. So that's a very stark figure that it's been confirmed by other organisations like the International Energy Agency. So we're not just talking about knocking off 10% or 20%, we're saying the majority of reserves really don't fit within our carbon budget.
Investors that lend money to the fossil fuel companies assume that the reserves held by the company can be burnt, and therefore sold. If carbon limits are in place and only 20% of reserves can be burnt, then 80% of the reserves become worthless assets. This creates a carbon bubble and could potentially throw the global economy into another financial crisis.
So what we see is a divergence between the financial markets continuing on a 6-degree trajectory, whereas the climate policy discussion is down at a 2-degree world. And the further apart those two get, the bigger the problem we have in terms of bringing the finance to solve the climate problems and ensuring that capital isn't being wasted on carbon intensive activities. And the longer that goes on and the further apart they get, the greater the risk is to both the financial system and the climate.
With high carbon investments fueling climate change, devastating the livelihoods of local communities, and threatening to lead to a new financial crisis, the world development movement is calling for urgent controls on the finance sector.
If we're ever to meet our climate targets, we need to put a stop to all new investment in fossil fuels, including in projects such as the coal mining in Kalimantan. At the moment, the financial sector in the UK is a complete free-for-all. Banks, pension funds and other investors are completely free to plough billions of pounds into these sorts of projects. This needs to change. The UK financial sector needs to be regulated to divert investment away from fossil fuels so we can meet our climate change commitments.